Kelli, thank you so much for joining me today. We're so excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. Now, I just have a couple of questions about you, and then we're going to talk about some really your fun quilt patterns. The first question is, have you always been a modern quilter, or did you kind of turn into a modern quilter?
I think just the way I grew up, my grandmothers quilted and their mothers quilted. And so I was always around these really old scrap quilts that are inspiring because I would just look at them and all the different colors and patterns of the fabric. And I would wonder, like, whose dress was that?
Oh,
That looks like
wow.
pajamas. Like, what was this? And it's just so inspiring to me. And then I think just it kind of turned into things that I like. Like, I was always drawn to, like, I always thought if there was a pattern with like a big this on it or something like that, and I couldn't find anything like that. So eventually I just kind of figured out how to do it myself.
That's wonderful. And how long have you been quilting? Since you were a little girl, kind of? I mean, it sounds like you have a history of quilting.
I think I started sewing in high school. My
Okay.
mom made me take a sewing class, and then I just started sewing 9 patches for her.
Oh, sure.
And then I kind of just got more interested in it in my 20s. And then when I had my son, then that really kind of inspired me because I always wanted to like make him quilts or
Sure.
pillowcases or
Sure. So would you say that you had a quilting mentor? Was there somebody that kind of really kind of helped you focus more on quilting than from sewing?
I don't think so. I think I just migrated there on my own, kind of.
Yeah, I kind of did the same thing. I could
Yeah.
always sew. And then I walked into a quilt shop one time and I was like, oh, I should do this.
The mothership has called you home.
Yes, it has.
Then the jeans or something. Yeah.
Yes, right. So let's talk about some of your quilt patterns because you've made some such fun ones. So the first one you did was kind of an homage to your husband, right?
Yeah, that's when I really figured out how to design, like the math. And then once I figured that out, I was like, oh, now I can put all the things from my head into quilt patterns. So he's a cyclist. And so he's always wanted to stop at the bike shop, and he can loiter in a bike shop and look at tires and gears like all day. And so I would start looking at the cruiser bikes, and I love those with the baskets and the
Right.
And so I thought, if I'm going to enter this contest, I'm going to try to do this. So I made a big cruiser bike.
I love it. And did you have that same cruiser bike at home, or did you just make it up in your quilting head?
I had one at home, not that specific one, but that's kind of what started my whole designing journey, because that was a contest and it ended up winning. And then people were saying, thank you. Then people were saying, oh, where's the pattern for this? So then I kind of had to figure out on the fly how to write a pattern.
Right.
So that kind of is what started it all.
Sure. Now, Expo is one of my favorites because I love the bright colors of this quilt and I love the triangle shapes. Kind of talk about your inspiration for creating this pattern.
That one I like sewing straight seams that are easy. Like, even if you're a beginner, if you can sew a straight seam, you can make really fun things. And so I tried to do where kind of 2 blocks would interact with each other and make like an extra pattern to the quilt.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that when you create blocks that have another pattern kind of hidden in them.
Yeah.
It just kind of
makes
me a little happy when you do that, because I do love that one and I love the bright colors of it and the bright geometric shapes. Now, you also created this really fun one called Wife of Pie. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
That one was, I kind of was working with the company called Triangles on a Roll. And they had, I don't know if they still have it, but they had this triangle paper. And so she sent me the triangle paper to see if I could come up with a design for it. Also, because I'm not a huge angle person, matching seams, triangles are a challenge for me.
Right.
So, but the paper made it where if you use this paper, it would be flawless. Like your points could match.
Ah,
And so then I just designed this whole kind of interlocking triangle thing out of the triangles.
mhm.
And then my husband and son are very mathy. So I figured they would like that one.
So that one actually started out as like foundation piecing, right? Where you
Yes.
sew the fabric to it. That's amazing. And that one also has those bright modern colors, which I think
Yeah.
is so fun. So
I
fun.
like color. Color makes me happy.
It does. And I think that, you know, for me, I would say I'm a modern quilter now, but I started with very traditional colors and very, you know, homespun fabrics. And, you know, now
Yeah.
I love grunge. And so I think for some of us, that journey has been a little bit different in the
Mhm.
fact that, you know, we've changed the things that we love, but I
Mhm.
definitely go towards color now.
Yeah.
Now, the next one, I have to tell you, Erica, who works in our office, she is a big fan of you, and she has made the Stitch Happens quilt,
Oh,
and it hangs behind her during all of our Zoom calls. It's so fun. So kind of give us a little bit of background on that one, because obviously it's a sewing machine and obviously it's true to your heart.
that one I kind of did for, I do a lot with Riley Blake.
Yes.
Like they'll send me like a fabric line and say, do you have any ideas for this? Or, you know, to come up with a design for their promotional material.
Right.
And then what they did is they asked me if I could make a sewing machine quilt a certain size for one of their market booths.
Okay.
And so I was kind of left like, there's so many sewing machine quilts and there's so many
Right.
sewing machine blocks and everything. So if I'm gonna do it, I wanted to do it a little bit different, but mix in the traditional blocks with it.
Right.
And so it was just a lot of trial on air and moving things around
Mhm.
and that's kind of where it ended up. And then it's been by far my most popular pattern, even still, and it's been a few years now.
Yes. I
Yeah.
often see it. People are making it. I see it on social media and like, oh, I just finished
Yeah.
this one. And it's just such a fun block. And I think for me, the thing I love about that particular pattern is, like you say, you took traditional quilt blocks and made them part of the sewing machine. And so you can
Yeah.
kind of see those little pinwheels in there and those other
Yeah.
blocks that are in
I
there.
like to mix in the traditional things with the more modern things because
Mhm.
that's kind of where we all come from anyway, you know, the
Yeah.
like the history of how we all kind of got here.
So one of my favorite patterns is called One Giant Stitch. And I understand that you created that after you had been on a family vacation. Is that right?
What happened is Riley Blake they were coming out with a NASA licensed line.
Okay.
And so they wanted to know if I had any ideas. And then I had always, since I was a kid, wanted to see a space shuttle launch. And then we had our son, and I'm like, maybe we can take him someday, but then they stopped that.
Right. Then it ended.
But yeah. And then I had gone to Quilt Market in 2015 with the Triangles on a Roll people.
Mhm.
And my husband and son flew in at the end of it, and we went to Johnson Space Center. And it
Wow.
was just so cool. And so those memories are all kind of wrapped up in that design that I came up with for that NASA fabric.
Right. And the thing I love about that particular quilt is that, you know, so many times we go on family vacations and you think, gosh, I really want to remember that. And obviously you take photographs, but wouldn't that be fun if, you know, one big trip a year, you made a quilt to commemorate it, and how
Yeah.
great that would be and what a priceless heirloom that would be for your kids.
Yeah.
So I love it. Well, Kelly, thank you so much for joining us today. Like I say, I'm a huge fan of your projects and your patterns, and I'm just so grateful that we had the time to chat today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to work with you.